At the moment, we return a hard-coded response for every request. Let's make this more dynamic. Instead of building the response in the server itself, we can let the caller of the server provide a custom handler for requests. All the server will have to do then is just call this handler, passing the request that it parsed. And to be able to call this handler, we have to create a new trait. So let's create a trait up here. It will be a public trait and we'll call it handler. It will have a method for handling a request. So let's create it. Fn handle request. It will take, let's make it a mutable reference to self so that the client can mutate the struct in any way they like. And it will also take a reference to the request. And it should return a response. Whoops. This has to be an arrow. Okay, but we also have one hard-coded response for bad requests. So we also need a bad request handler. Let's define another function and we'll call it handle bad request. And it will again get a mutable self, but this time it will get a reference to an error. And when we fail to parse a request, the error is a parse error that is defined in the request. So this handler will get a reference to the parse error and it will also return a response. We just have to pull the parse error into our scope. Now we can pass a new parameter to the run method, which will be our handler. So for a type, we'll just say impo handler. And instead of hard coding responses, we can change all that with calling the handler dot handle request, and we pass a reference to the request, or we change this with handler dot handle bad request, and we pass a reference to the error. Okay, now this code looks much better. One cool thing that we can do with traits is that we can provide default implementations for some of the methods in the trait. The implementers of the handler might not want to implement the bad request handler because it is pretty generic. So in the body of the trait, we can provide an implementation for this method directly. And here we can say that we want to print failed to parse request, and we want to print the error, and we also return a new response that will be of status code bad request with an empty body. So now anyone who implements this trait can still override this method. Any implementers of the handler trait can provide their own implementation of the handle bad request method, but if they don't, this implementation will be used. Now, of course, our code will not compile because we're not passing a handler when we are calling the run method in the main.rs file. So let's create a new file directly in the source directory, and this file will hold the implementation of the handler. Let's call it website handler.rs. And we will have to add this module to the main.rs file. So we say mod website handler. All right, and in it, we create a new struct. It has to be a public struct that is called a website handler. And now we have to pull the handler trait into our scope. So from super, we want to go to the server module and we want to get the handler from it. Okay, and now we can implement the handler for our website handler. And we have to define the handle request method, which takes a mute self, and it takes a reference to a request, which we'll also have to pull in our scope, and it returns a response. So let's come up here and also pull from super we want the HTTP module, and from it we will want the request and the response. We would also want the status code, and now we can return a response. So we can say response new, and we pass status code, okay, with some body of h1, and let's say test, and we want to convert that to a string. And now in main.rs we can create a new website handler and pass it. So first we have to say that from the website handler module we want to import the website handler, and in here we just create a new handler. We don't have to pass any parameters to it because it is an empty struct. If we go to the console now, we can run our code, and if we open a browser and we go to this address, yes, we see the test that we were returning from our handler.